When you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you think sets a kind of direction for the rest of the day. Yeah. Most people don't recognize how powerful those initial moments are. They reach for their phone, scroll through noise, and let the world decide their state of mind before they've even properly opened their eyes. But the truth is, your morning mindset is a steering wheel. It can turn you toward order, clarity, and possibility, or it can steer you straight into distraction, resentment, and chaos. And that choice isn't made once in a lifetime. It's made every single day at the very beginning, in the silence before the world demands something from you. Think about how fragile those first thoughts are. If you begin the morning with complaints, I'm tired, I don't want to go to work, why do I have to do this again? You program yourself to see the day as an obstacle, not an opportunity. Your psychology begins to search for evidence that supports your negativity. Suddenly, the traffic is unbearable, your boss is unfair, and even the weather feels like it's against you. That is not because the world changed. It's because your interpretation of the world was poisoned at the very start. Now imagine the opposite. You wake up and the first thing you say to yourself is, I get another chance today. You take a moment of gratitude for something small, your health, your family, the roof over your head, even the simple fact that you woke up at all. That gratitude alters your lens. The world hasn't changed, but your ability to perceive opportunity has. Suddenly, the same traffic gives you time to think. The same work gives you a platform to grow. The same weather simply becomes the environment in which you will move forward. The circumstances haven't shifted. This is why I say, don't let your alarm clock dictate your morning. Let your mindset do it. The alarm is just a noise, a trigger to wake your body, but your mind, your attention, your deliberate thoughts, those are what truly wake your spirit. The discipline to choose your first thought is the foundation for winning the day. It's a discipline because it won't come naturally. Your brain, left unchecked, tends to drift toward worry, stress, or comfort. That's the path of least resistance. But greatness never grows in least resistance. It grows in deliberate, conscious effort. There's a deeper psychological truth here. The philosopher William James once said, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." Your morning gives you that choice in its purest form. Before emails, before conversations, before responsibility, you have a few seconds where your mind is uncluttered. And in those seconds, you can either plant the seeds of chaos or the seeds of order. If you plant chaos, the day will be spent in damage control. If you plant order, the day will unfold with direction and stability. It's also important to understand that this is not some naive optimism. This is not pretending that life is easy. In fact, life is hard and it always will be. But the morning mindset is about preparing yourself to meet that difficulty as someone capable, resilient, and ready. If you step out of bed already defeated, the challenges ahead will crush you. If you step out of bed with purpose, those same challenges become weights you can lift that make you stronger. Ask yourself honestly, what kind of day do you want to live? A day where you drift like a leaf, carried by whatever current life throws at you? Or a day where you hold the oar, steer your course, and meet the winds head on? The difference is not in external circumstances, it's in the thought you chose when the alarm rang. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, resist the urge to hand your mind to the world immediately. Don't open the phone. Don't surrender to the rush. Take a breath. Take one single deliberate thought of gratitude, of purpose, of clarity. Anchor yourself in it. Tell yourself, this day is mine to win, not the world's to dictate. And then carry that anchor into everything that follows. If you practice this daily, you will notice a transformation. Not in the events that happen to you, but in the strength with which you face them. And when you strengthen that muscle day after day, you don't just win the morning, you win the day. You win your life. So let me leave you with this. The way you greet the morning is the way the day will greet you back. Choose carefully because your first thought can either be the beginning of defeat or the spark of victory. Motivation is a tricky thing. It's like a flame. It burns bright for a moment. It excites you. It makes you feel unstoppable. But if you rely on that alone, it fades. Anyone who has tried to start a new habit knows this. On the first day, you feel inspired. You're ready to change your life. By the third day, the spark is weaker. And by the end of the week, you've slipped back into the comfort you were trying to escape. That's because motivation is unreliable. It's emotional. It depends on how you feel, and feelings are unstable. If your strategy for success depends on always feeling good, then you will fail the moment life feels hard. This is why discipline is more powerful than motivation. Discipline is the structure that holds you up when your feelings betray you. It's the part of you that says, I don't care if I don't feel like it. I will do it anyway. That's the difference between people who succeed consistently and people who succeed only when it's convenient. The first group has built discipline. The second group relies on motivation. Think about how you begin your morning. There's a battle as soon as the alarm goes off. One voice says, stay in bed, you're tired. You deserve more rest. That's comfort speaking. Another voice says, get up, you've got work to do. Your future depends on this. That's discipline. And whoever you listen to in that moment will define the entire direction of your day. If you choose comfort, you've already lost the battle before the day has even begun. But if you choose discipline, even once you've taken control, that one decision creates momentum. It's like putting the first brick down and building the day. Without it, there is no structure. With it, everything else can follow. The reason discipline matters more than motivation is because life will not always be convenient. There will be mornings when you're tired, evenings when you're drained, moments when everything in you screams to quit. If you depend on motivation, you'll give in. But discipline is a promise you make to yourself that doesn't expire when you're uncomfortable. In fact, discomfort is the very place where discipline thrives. There's a psychological reality behind this. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen a neural pathway. You're literally training your brain to identify yourself as someone who does hard things, someone who follows through. This builds confidence, not because you told yourself affirmations in the mirror, but because you gave yourself evidence through action. Confidence built on discipline is unshakable. It doesn't matter if others doubt you, because you have proof in your own behavior that you can be trusted to act. It's also important to note that discipline is not about grand gestures. It's not about running a marathon on the first try or overhauling your life in a single week. Discipline is about the small, consistent actions that seem almost invisible in the moment but compound over time. Waking up when you said you would, completing the task you promised yourself, pushing through one more repetition at the gym, reading instead of scrolling. Those acts may not seem heroic, but they accumulate into a life that feels unstoppable. When you look at people you admire, people who accomplish extraordinary things, it's tempting to assume they're always motivated. But if you ask them, most would tell you they're not. They simply built a life on discipline so strong that motivation isn't required. They act because action has become who they are, not because they always feel like it. This is why winning the morning matters. It's not about waiting for a burst of energy or inspiration. It's about laying down a foundation of discipline so that the rest of the day has something to stand on. If you leave it up to motivation, the foundation crumbles as soon as emotions shift. If you leave it to discipline, you can build something solid that endures no matter what the day throws at you. So tomorrow morning, when you face that battle between comfort and discipline, remember what's at stake. You're not just deciding whether to stay in bed or get up. You're deciding who you are. You're voting for the future version of yourself with every choice. And if you keep casting votes for discipline day after day, eventually the results are undeniable. You become someone who doesn't need motivation to act because action is already embedded in your identity. Let me leave you with this. Comfort will make you soft, but discipline will make you strong. And strength, not comfort, is what wins the day. Most people wake up, go through the motions, and never stop to ask themselves a simple but profound question. Why am I doing what I'm doing today? They fall into routine without direction. They chase tasks, but not meaning. They become efficient at being busy, but they are not effective at living. That's why mornings are not just about routines or rituals. They're about alignment. Alignment with who you are, what you value, and where you're going. If you start your day without that alignment, you're like a ship setting sail without a compass. You might move, but you won't know if you're heading anywhere worth reaching. Think about the power of reminding yourself every morning of your bigger purpose. Not the temporary goals, not the shallow markers of success, but the deep reason you're here. If you don't do this, life will hand you distractions, the emails will pile up, the obligations will fill the hours. You'll be caught in endless activity, but none of it will feel connected to anything greater. The tragedy is that you can spend a lifetime being busy and still feel empty because you never aligned your actions with your purpose. Psychologically, humans need meaning more than they need comfort. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, observed that those who had a why could endure almost any how. That is not just a poetic insight, it's a brutal truth. Without a sense of why, suffering becomes unbearable and even success feels hollow. But with a sense of why, suffering becomes sacrifice and success becomes fulfillment. That is the difference alignment makes. When you wake up and you remind yourself of your larger purpose, you frame the day differently. The difficulties you encounter are no longer random annoyances. They're challenges along the path of something bigger. The work you do is no longer just a way to get through the hours. It becomes an investment in your future self, in your family, in the people who depend on you. Even the smallest task gains weight because it is connected to something beyond itself. That connection transforms how you experience life. This doesn't mean your purpose has to be grand in the world's eyes. It doesn't mean everyone needs to build an empire or save humanity. Purpose is deeply personal. For one person, it might be raising children with strength and kindness. For another, it might be creating something that didn't exist before. For someone else, it might simply be to become the kind of person they themselves can respect. Whatever it is, the point is to live aligned with it, so your days are not wasted on things that pull you away from it. Now mornings are critical because they are the reset point. They're the moment where you can re-anchor yourself before the chaos begins. If you don't take that moment, the world will set the agenda for you. Your phone will scream with notifications. Social media will tell you what matters. Other people's demands will drag you in 10 directions at once. You'll be reactive instead of proactive. And if you repeat that enough days in a row, you lose track of your own life. But if you start by aligning yourself, even briefly, you take ownership, you become the author of the day instead of just a character in someone else's story. That alignment doesn't make the day easier, but it does make it clearer, and clarity is power. Because once you know what the day is for, you know what to say yes to, and just as importantly, what to say no to. There's also a philosophical depth here. Alignment is about integrity. It's about being whole. The word integrity comes from the root meaning undivided. A person without alignment is divided. They say one thing, believe another, and do something else entirely. That division creates inner conflict, guilt, anxiety. But a person with alignment is unified. Their thoughts, words, and actions point in the same direction. That unity gives peace and it gives strength. You can't fake it. You either have it or you don't. And you build it by choosing every morning to live deliberately instead of accidentally. right? So tomorrow, don't just wake up to a to-do list, wake up to a vision. Remind yourself of your why, anchor your tasks in meaning, and when the challenges come, and they always will, you'll have something greater pulling you forward. You'll be less likely to crumble because you're not working for comfort. You're working for purpose. Now, let me close this point with something simple but urgent. If you don't align your days with your purpose, someone else will align them with theirs. Don't let that happen. Win your morning by remembering your why. And you won't just get through the day, you'll grow through it.